Have you ever laughed at an utterly inappropriate moment, like at a funeral? Maybe not, but sometimes people laugh when something is so overwhelmingly painful because they're trying to deflect going deeper into their emotions. This is usually unconscious. Your mind is putting off a type of wall to combat these emotions. In fact, if that happens, it's actually totally normal. Not common, but totally normal. I remember being in a class in my undergrad years about the Chinese Cultural Revolution. The professor was describing a scene where a Chinese man was being literally kicked to death while he's on the ground. And the really haunting and weird image is that he was laughing the whole time while he was slowly dying in pain. That's a rather dramatic example, but people do this, laughing at painful moments, and they're not taking things lightly, and they're not insensitive. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They are extraordinarily sensitive souls, and they feel things with a profound intensity. But if they felt the pain like a full frontal impact, unmediated, unfiltered, it might psychologically obliterate them. And so they laugh. We laugh oftentimes to protect ourselves from pain that is utterly unbearable. And we sarcastically mock those things we cannot face, those things that hit too close home, that really painful stuff that's really deep inside of us. Read Genesis chapter 18, 1 through 15 on your own. I'm not going to read it right now, it'll take too long, but I'll summarize it for you. In this part, God visits Abraham and Sarah, but he visits them in the form of three travelers. And God says to Abraham, quote, "Your wife will have a son." Now, at this point, Sarah is old and barren. She's like 90 years old. She was outside the tent and eavesdropping. And this is what the Bible says. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?" End quote. Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I am so old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, and so she lied and said, "I did not laugh." But the Lord said, "Yes, you did laugh." I find that last line haunting. God says, "Yes, you did. You lied. You did laugh." So why did Sarah laugh? Because the prospect of being a mother at that age was too absurd. It was worthy of humor. It was just hysterical. No, I don't think so. I think being barren was likely the most painful and devastating reality of her long life. Again, she was 90 when she finally had her son, Isaac. I imagine her whole life she waited and hoped for a child, but she couldn't conceive, and so it probably hurt her really deep in the core of her identity. And then after years and years and years of waiting, she just gave up hoping, probably because hoping hurt too much. So the hope is gone, but the pain and the disappointment remains. But she found a way to cope and live with the pain. But then when the Lord shows up and says Sarah will have a child, she laughs because she cannot afford to hope again. And those words felt cruel. They stabbed at her weakest, most sensitive, and most vulnerable, painful spot. So of course she laughed. She laughed defensively, or she mocked God, or she was sarcastic about this idea of her having a baby. And then God calls her out on it. Is anything too hard for the Lord? And Sarah lies. She's scared. And God says, "You did laugh." And God is saying, "You remember this. You mocked me. You laughed at me. And I remember that you mocked me." A year later, Sarah had a baby, and he was named Isaac. The name Isaac means "he will laugh." Isn't that strange? He will laugh. She named her son Laughter. Why? More on that next time.